When the world is just too much, turn it off and turn on positive, encouraging K-Love.
I'm gonna praise.
World off. K-Love on.
K-Love is sunshine for my soul.
I love K-Love.
Listen now on your radio, online, or on the free K-Love app.
K-Love makes me feel so good.
Positive, encouraging K-Love.
Welcome to Beyond the Huddle, a Central Arkansas FCA podcast where faith meets competition. Join host Josh Adair and Zach Rose as they dive into real stories from athletes, coaches, and leaders making an eternal impact through sports. Each episode brings powerful conversations on faith, leadership, and living boldly for Christ in every field of play and walk of life. This is Beyond the Huddle.
Welcome to Beyond the Huddle, the Central Arkansas FCA podcast where faith meets competition. I'm your host, Zach Rose. My co-host, Josh Adair, is not here with us. So sad. But we have a very special episode for you today. I'm super excited. We have a dynamic duo in here who I know is going to share their hearts. And I'm excited to learn more about your stories as we kind of dive into that here in just a minute. But Scott and Pam Cameron are here with us. They are newer to our FCA team, but not our newest members. And I'm just super excited to see how you as a couple are serving together on FCA staff and impacting the kingdom in the schools that you're at. So again, just super anxious to hear all that the Lord has done in your life to lead you to Central Arkansas, because I know you're not originally from this area. So let's go ahead and just dive right into it here. Scott, we'll have you share first and
Sure.
Just share a little bit about yourself, maybe some of your upbringing, we'll run from there.
Yeah. I didn't come from a Christian family. My parents were Church of Religious Science, which is a cult and very strange. I can go back probably to the age of 5. With my parents teaching me stuff about Church of Religious Science, and God was there with me the whole time, even though what they were teaching me was not biblical. My parents didn't believe in Christ. They didn't believe there was a God. They didn't believe there was a hell. And at 5 years old, my parents are teaching me this, and I can feel God over my shoulder going, no, that's not right. I mean, it's strange, but at 5 years old, not believing your parents was unique, and then to come to find out as I got older that it was a cult. I got born again in 1978 by Greg Laurie in Southern California, a huge pastor there before he had his own church, when he had hair down to the middle of his back. So it was amazing, born again then, and I knew of God. I knew there was a God. I believed in God, but I didn't have a relationship with God until I was in my early 30s. I'm 65 now.
Yeah.
So.
And sorry, where did you say you grew up in?
Southern California.
Okay.
Grew up in Southern California.
Yeah.
Lifetime as a firefighter.
Okay.
Mostly around motorsports.
Yeah.
Started in drag boat racing, and we were losing drivers by death.
Yeah.
Constantly back in the 70s and 80s, which led me to NASCAR. I've been with NASCAR. This is my 30th year with NASCAR as a firefighter. Been 18 years at Talladega Superspeedway as a chaplain for them. So, and that all goes back to my very first rescue in drag boat racing. To make a long story short, we had a boat crash. We went out and rescued him. The rescue went terrible. We get the driver on shore. I'm doing CPR on him. He was clinically dead at that point, but we were trying to revive him. I looked up, and here's his wife and a little kid under each arm while I'm working on Dad. And Dad dies. I wasn't mentally capable at 18 or prepared to handle the death.
Yeah.
I turned to alcohol to soothe the pain. I didn't become an alcoholic, but I drank after the races to soothe that. And I never become an alcoholic, but I used it. So moving forward, that's what took me to NASCAR. I wanted something where the drivers had a cage around them, and then in my 30s, I decided that when I met Pam, we've been married 32 years. She really helped lead me to Christ and keep me going with Christ.
Yeah.
And got involved. We both became chaplains, emergency ministry chaplains, and that goes back right to my very first rescue. I don't want anybody to go through any pain in life without having an avenue of God, there for them in case they have problems. Everybody has problems in life, and it would be real sad to go through life nowadays without having God to fall back on.
Yeah, that's so good. So motorsports is a really niche kind of avenue, I would say, in a world where your Power 4 sports of basketball, baseball, soccer, or whatever else, hockey you want to throw in there. But to be involved in that at a young age, where did your love for NASCAR, and you talked about speed boating, where did your need for speed come from? Where did that originate from?
I think that came from my dad. He took me to a lot of drag racing in Southern California at that time, and that was something that we could do. I wasn't into sports as a kid because I was dyslexic. I could look right at you and throw a football to you, and it would go to the left or the right, would never go towards you. So my thing was, if it didn't have a kickstand, I didn't want anything to do with it.
Sure.
So that's kind of my direction into motorsports.
Yeah.
And loved drag boat racing because of all the chrome and blown motors. At 5 years old, I can remember taking a cassette deck and taping the sound of a blown boat going by and coming back and dubbing music over the top of it. And I love the combination of the two. So
that's awesome.
My racing career started there.
Yeah.
And NASCAR, not that I'm a huge NASCAR fan. I mean, I am, but not a huge one like drag boat racing. That NASCAR was a necessity because I wanted the drivers to be safer, to have a cage around them because of that death. I wanted the drivers to have the biggest save that they could from God.
Yeah, that's so good. Well, I want to jump more into your story with motorsports and kind of jumping into that world in a minute. But we would be doing you a disservice if we didn't bring your wife into the equation here as well, and tell some of your story as well. So, Pam, would you mind just maybe sharing a little bit about your upbringing? And then I do want to hit on, and you can kind of tell your perspective of how you guys met, what that when you got married, and what that time was like for you guys as a young couple.
Yeah, I think mine was really everybody who knows me knows I'm not afraid to just say, hey, how's it going? Or meet people or just jump out there. When I was really young, my parents went to church and didn't go to church. My dad was Catholic. My mom was Episcopalian. And so they took us. But when I can remember all the way back to being 8. And I was walking down the street and some lady under a tree had a bunch of kids. And it looked like a storybook. And I walked up to her and said, what are you doing? And she said, we're learning about Jesus. And I said, well, I want to learn about Jesus. So she gave me my first Bible that I have today. That was Mrs. Hunter. And ever since then, about 2 years later after that, a girlfriend of mine invited me to a Catholic church. And at 8 years old or 9, I would get up on Sunday by myself, get dressed, ride my bike over to her house and go to church with them. And I think one of the things I remembered as far as bringing your family into it is we were at the river and I was crying and my mom said, what's wrong? And I said, all the kids are making their first Holy Communion today but me. And she said that was the first time she realized that I had a calling, that I really had something that Jesus was pulling at me. And to that day, until she passed, she said she felt bad about it. So it was one of those things about parents taking notice of your kids in their identity of what they're doing at that time. And I think once I got older, you go into that party stage. I lived out at the beach, and all kids falter and go off and do whatever they're going to do and stuff. Well, right down the road in Orange County, they had people like Greg Laurie, but where we were in Manhattan Beach and all that, nobody was talking about it. So it was like, I think it did the youth a disservice at that time because we could have been a lot further. And FCA wasn't out there at all. And I was in semi-pro sports and had made the junior Olympic team for to be accepted to go for time trials. A week before our time trials, I was at a meet and kids were blowing by me and I couldn't understand why my legs weren't moving. And they took me to a doctor and told me that your shin splints look like that thing you put down a drain and that you will never be able to run track again.
Wow.
So I went into a deep depression as a kid because everybody knew you as Ricochet or Speedy. And not being able to do that is what brought me into more of the identity, for kids, having something else like God instead of just being able to rely on your specific sport. So as we got older, we joined a church. We got married in 94. And Scott had, like he said, he had a relationship, but not a personal relationship, where I was developing my personal relationship. And so we found a church we went to. We started getting involved, doing everything, and started doing women's ministry and kids ministry. And it was interesting because when kids would be dropped off for, like, let's say a youth night on Wednesdays, I would take the parents, instead of having them leave, come and do a program called Dealing with Difficult Teens. Little did I know that as I had done that program and then went through our lives, which Scott will tell you, we've had some ups and downs, crazy, where my big thing is, I guess I could write a book on it. It would be about trust. And that's my big thing in my relationship with God, is how I've learned to trust him through everything that we're doing and that I want to, expose other kids to, if you will.
Yeah.
So we started, like you said, our chaplain ministry and working together. We have 2 daughters. One of them, like I was telling you, I thought it was like a movie. It was one of those things where you have all these experiences and you realize that those are going to be used later on. So we had got married and I couldn't have any kids. I lost a couple of them and then became a stepmom, and then also later on an adoptive mom. So we started that program, and it's funny because I thought about that in our business life and how we've got businesses and they were very successful and lost them. But as we go through all of those changes, God brings you to a point where if you are trusting in him, that you can share those experiences with others. And I thought, well, some people normally have one of those. They either can't have kids or whatever, or their financial problems or medical. I said, but we've had kind of like all of them. So I thought, okay, this is like a huge book here that I could start. And I talked about it and I said it'd be called The Big U-Turn in Life.
Yeah, that's so good. So much to learn from your story, I'm sure, and both of your stories together, of unique life circumstances, things that we talk about on this show a lot. Everyone experiences pain. If Josh was here, he would say the common denominator of the human race is that everyone experiences pain at some point in their life.
Exactly.
And as we trust in God and develop our relationship with him, it is so incredibly encouraging to see how God uses pain to be able to further reveal his glory through us and in our situations. And I know for you guys, that has been a big part of your story growing up. So as you transition into married life and stepping into chaplaincy, was that originally with NASCAR first, or did that start off in a different segment?
I was blessed at the church that we went to in Southern California for 17, almost 18 years. There was a fire chief that was California Department of Forestry fire chief, which is the largest fire department in California, became a pastor at the church we were at, and he wanted to start a chaplaincy. He was asked by the church to start a chaplaincy, and he came to me. His name was Tom Tisdale, just a wonderful man, just had really changed my life now looking back. And with all of his knowledge, we started a chaplaincy at the church, and we had it up to 50 chaplains. And that's where the basis of our chaplain class that we teach for free for any church that, or fire department or sheriff's department or police department that wants a chaplaincy, we're willing to come in and teach it for free and help them get started. That's where all this came from. It was from Tom Tisdale.
Yeah.
And so that's where everything grew. Pam, when we got married, I was a believer, but I didn't have that relationship. And she prayed and prayed and prayed for me to get a relationship with God, not knowing how far it would take it to today being an ordained pastor.
Yeah.
I don't think she ever envisioned that at all.
Wow. That's quite a journey. You talked about your time as a firefighter. So how long were you in just firefighting in that realm?
Well, I started in 1978.
Okay.
So it goes way back to today. I'm still working for NASCAR as a firefighter and chaplain. So I'm in an extrication truck at Talladega Superspeedway. As I said, I've been there for 30 years in the same position as an extrication technician, specializing in when the drivers are trapped in the car. I'm trained to cut them out. And there's a team of us that do that. And it's very rewarding, to have that. And that kind of goes along with my very first rescue with somebody dying in my arms. Anybody that's in that pain area or trouble, I want to be able to have God available for them, to show them that there's a place that God will lead you out and be there for you. So it kind of all goes with my makeup as a firefighter to help people. That's the difference between like a policeman there to keep rule. A firefighter wants to help you when you're hurting. Yeah,
that's good. How do you feel like in your transition from believer to truly a follower and disciple of Jesus, what clicked for you eventually? What did that process look like for you? I think about a young athlete listening to this episode or a coach listening to this episode who's been struggling with their faith, who's been wrestling back and forth. Maybe they know the truth. Maybe they've heard the truth their whole life, but they haven't fully submitted to a relationship with Jesus. What did that process look like for you? How did that refine you and stretch you? And what eventually led you to fully just say, you know what, Jesus, I'm all yours. Like, you can reign in my life however you please. What did that process look like in your life?
Wow, that's a huge story. We could talk all day on that one. We've had our ups and downs, in business. We were also business owners, and we've had businesses that failed, not because of stuff that we did ourselves, but outside circumstances, whether somebody cheats and it ends up taking us down too. We've had that. We've had economy go down. So to answer your question, with all of these negatives, the common denominator of good has always been God.
Wow.
And I can remember we owned a trucking company, and we had a truck that crashed. Driver was hurt severely. Ended up dying in the hospital 30 days later. Was in the hospital for 30 days. And at the same time, while we were tending to him and being there for him, we had a controller at our business embezzle $100,000 away. And I can remember laying on the couch, so nervous. How do I handle all this? I was in my mid-30s. My legs looked like a wave. My muscles were just contracting, going in and out, trying to handle all this myself. And that was the turning point for me to give it to God. God, I was doing it all myself. It was all Scott. If I just turned it over to God, he would handle all that. Clear all of the negative and help me walk alongside me. That's when I got a relationship with God. And that's been 35 years that I've been perfecting. How does Scott let God take control, get rid of the human self, and do it God's way?
Yeah, that's so good. So, Pam, as he's walking through that in his life, and as you're getting a front row seat to seeing all that the Lord is doing, moving through, how do you support him as a wife in a season like that, where you don't want to be overbearing to where you're making that choice for him, but allowing him to make that choice, and I'm sure praying for him in that season? What did that look like for you to support Scott in that season as he's navigating it and
Let
figuring
me
that
step in here real quick before she speaks.
What happened?
Pam is the most supportive wife, and I give Pam 100% credit to all of our success in ministry, in business. She is the backbone of us. We are really a team together, and it's not what either one of us did. It's both of us together make one giant diamond.
Yeah.
So neither one of us are tremendous part. We are just a lump of coal, but you put us together, that really is a diamond that shines together. And that's based on her drive, her motive. So for support, to answer your question for her, she is amazing. I've always said I married up.
I think one of the things that we do is a lot of couples, when stressful situations happen or things that are life-changing, like can't have a kid, and when you're losing one, or when you have a business that's multi-million dollars and you lose it all, and including your house, and you start over. I think one of the things God gifted us is with that trust, if you will, again, because that's my word, is that it binds us together. Where he failed or where he's lacking, I support. Where I'm lacking or behind, he pulls that together.
Yeah.
And I think we don't blame. There's no blame game. It's just, okay, what do we need to do next? God's going to tell us. We need to trust in that. Lean not on your own understanding, kind of, and he'll guide your path, which I have found that has been so truthful for me. I think when we have gone through some of the heaviest times where we both, of course, celebrated together, but both of us have cried together, is when we become stronger. And I think having that faith, even since I was little, that personal calling, if you will, has enabled me to pull not from me, but pull from a stronger source that's given me that ability, and then to help him where he says, if he says something like I have dyslexia or whatever else, and we just pull together to be able to bind to get stronger, I guess.
Yeah.
That would be the bottom line.
Yeah. That's so good. I've been married for 3 or 4 months now, and every day you learn that you are teammates in what you do, and you're only as good as your weakest link, as they would say.
Absolutely.
And so to encourage one another and lift each other up in that is so encouraging. And to kind of emphasize that within what you are currently doing with FCA, would you mind sharing a little bit about the schools that you currently get to serve in here in Central Arkansas? We haven't really talked much about that yet. And then we'll kind of dive into some of that now as well.
Yeah, I think one of the things, just a caveat on what we were saying, even in our wedding vows, our pastor that did it was talking about 2 little scraggly Charlie Brown trees, and we put it together, it became a big pine. So it's just one of those that even from the very beginning, we've done that. Even for FCA, when we first came in, we were in a crossroads when we had left California and moved to our house that we had in Arizona. Scott was trying to figure out, I'm going to let him tell you that story about what and drew us to FCA. But what I can caveat on that is that when he started talking about it, the mission and vision, I've always wanted to do full-time ministry, but doing, not a lot of women want to do a trucking company full-time and have it. But once we got into this position where we could do full-time ministry, it was like, wow, I want to know all about this. I want to see if they have something for me. And I think it was exciting for us to start that journey long before we came here. And he tells a story about when we first were going to move to Arkansas, it wasn't on our radar. Our daughter lives here. We have grandkids, and she had talked about, I want to go to your house. And Scott will tell you, that was his breaking point. He said, we need to go So he started looking up ministry out here, and he found FCA. But as he was telling me about it, and I'm thinking, wow, this is God's opportunity for me to be able to do full-time ministry. I want to know more. So we started to do the research on it, and then I'll let him go into it because his story was like right out of something God would pull, he would do.
Yeah, we came over for our granddaughter's 3rd birthday. Little tiny blonde runs up to me, Grandpa, I want to go to your house, because we lived in Lake Havasu, had a house right on the water. We did boating, golf carting. So she saw that as fun, and that's what Grandpa represented. So when she says, I want to go to your house, she didn't realize how far away it was in Arizona. So that's when we decided we're moving here. So I found FCA. I was a pastor in Arizona. Got ordained there in Arizona as a pastor. And we decided that we were looking for a Christian job out here. So I opened up Indeed, and first thing that popped up was FCA, and started researching FCA and going, wow, this really fits me as a person. This is exactly where I want to be in teaching people about Christ and to lead a life with Jesus. And just everything about it. There was zero negatives on what they were doing. So I started all the background within that. I filled out an application online, and I didn't hear anything back within a week. So I said, okay, maybe they already found a person. But it was that voice again, the same voice I had as a kid. You need to push on, push harder. So I found Jeff Wilkerson's information online, all his personal information. Took me about 2 hours to find it. So I called him, left a message with him, I'm an ordained pastor. I've worked for NASCAR at that time for 27 years, been a chaplain, emergency ministry chaplain, and I'm being led to FCA. Left that message, and about 10 minutes later, I get a phone call, and I look down, and it says Benton, Arkansas. So I knew who it was. So I said, this is Scott, and he said, this is Jeff Wilkerson. And he sounded like a 5-year-old kid that just was told he's going to Disneyland for the second time. That's how excited he was. He says, I didn't answer the phone because I was praying for God to bring us somebody special.
Wow.
And that just said, okay, God, this is where we're supposed to be. So I started all the background research into FCA and doing all the training. And Pam, as I said, is the backbone of us. And she's been there 100% behind me in everything I do. Anytime I do a men's study or a Bible study, she always wants to come alongside me and do it with me. That's her drive to study about God. So as she's doing the study with me, preparing to apply for FCA, she's going, man, this is great. This is really something that I want to do too. She's always been into women's ministry, was her everything. I mean, everything in ministry was around women's ministry, is what she had that desire. So I said, I've got a 3-way call with Jeff. Why don't I'll ask him if you can get on. And so they ended up talking a half an hour, and he says, Pam, did you realize that 51% of the coaches out there are female? And she says, no. And I didn't grab that either. So that opened that door. And he said, well, Scott's going back to boot camp. Why don't you come along? We'll pay for everything. Come along with him. And it's just been a whirlwind. Yeah. We went back, and I gave a 4-month notice to the church I was at. We decided to put our house up for sale and make the move out here to Arkansas. Yeah. And I'll tell you, it's to move from Southern California and then Arizona on a beautiful lake to come to Arkansas, which we had looked at places to retire, and Arkansas never even came up in the conversation. It's the best thing we've ever done. Wow. We absolutely love Central Arkansas. We even love the weather and the humidity. When you come from Havasu, where it's 128 degrees,
over 100 days in a row.
That's a little bit of different heat out there.
Yeah. The heat there is killer.
Yeah.
128 degrees. It's kind of like when you bake cookies and the chocolate chip cookies are almost done, and you peek the oven open to look at your cookies to see if they're, and that heat hits you.
Yeah.
That's what Havasu is like, but it goes 90 days straight.
Yeah.
Without even getting under 100. So,
Wow.
We came here and just God has been kicking the doors open. We're in Sheridan School District, and we were told, Sheridan is kind of out there, and they had a couple issues getting people to go that far. And, we were open. We didn't know anything about the area at all. All we knew was Benton and Bryant. So we looked around that area, and we don't know. We found Grace Church, which is in East End, Arkansas, and absolutely just fell in love with it. Started watching online from Arizona. It's kind of funny. Our daughter's 37 years old, and I called her and I said, "Hey, honey, Caitlin, we found a church that we really, really like." And she says, "Oh, what church is it? And where is it?" And I said, "It's in East End." I said, "How's that area?" She goes, "Oh, it's nice. It's nice. It's very country, rural." I said, "That's exactly what we're looking for." She says, and what church? And I said, "Grace." And she starts laughing. I said, "Honey, what are you laughing at?" She goes, "Dad, that's where we go to church. That's where your granddaughter goes to school."
Wow.
I'm going, "Okay, God, this is where we're supposed to be." And that just rolled everything. We were able to sell our house in Arizona, bought a beautiful house, little 1,500 square foot house on an acre. I mean, it's like a dream. We pinch ourselves still to this day. It's been 18 months we've been here.
Yeah.
How happy we are to work with these kids in Sheridan. I am absolutely blown away how many kids know the Bible. Amazing, front to back.
Yeah.
The football players, the soccer players, and softball, the girls are just, all of them are amazing. I'll let Pam tell the story about she's even led a retreat for the cheerleaders.
I think one of the things that we really loved is when we came, we used that trust thing again, because we came actually with just a small trailer. We had sold everything else, and we came. We even got the bed that we were sleeping on that night that we moved here. So when we didn't know anybody, maybe a few people, and then to go down into Sheridan and to start really getting involved with the kids and just showing up and being there. Chaplaincy is ministry of presence, and I think it kind of rolled over into that because that's what they need. They need that ministry of presence to know that someone's out there rooting for them and just there for them and just wanting to share. But having everybody open up, the school board, the principals, the coaches, the ADs, just being open. We have a coaches huddle where we have about 8 coaches that come in Thursday morning, 6 a.m. A little early for a lot of them. We're trying to get another one started that's a little later so we can get more people to come. But just to have that kind of support and that kind of just acknowledgement that God's needed, God's needed. But I think as Scott was mentioning, there's a lot of kids, it's the Bible Belt. There's a church on every corner. But there's a lot of kids who know it, but there's also a lot of kids who don't have any relationship. It's been forced, like a lot of kids, they have to go to church every Sunday, and then they get to that teen years, and then they kind of go, I'm doing my own thing, going off, and then they may come back in their late 20s. We hope to see that, there's a lot of things going on, but I think down in Sheridan with that, the huddles that are being built, the kids are taking ownership. We've done God through us has been able to do a field of faith. Yeah. We had about 820 people come last year for, I think it was our second one. And we did over 500 and something kids who came for Courts of Faith in the spring. Yeah. So it's really exciting to see the difference in what just presenting the word can do, kind of breaking it down for them. I love our E3. I love our leadership training that we can give them. We provide the resources for them that they otherwise might not have. When we bring Bibles onto the campus or to the kids, they are, can we have one of those? Can we, how much, and when we're handing them out right and left, it's like you're restocking, which is amazing. And absolutely, I love that part.
Yeah.
I love that they want to do it. We want to try and get ambassadors in each sport this next season coming up, and then also have what we have what we call multi-sport huddles, and have the one big ones every quarter that everybody gets together, because we always tell them that there's more power in unity, and then we also tell them that when they come to the huddles and they kind of give me that look like, what? We tell them, if you're going to be in here and you say you go to church on Sunday, that you go to a huddle on Wednesday, that you go to a youth group on Wednesday, that you do all these things, but then you get out in the real world and your but your TikTok and your, Instagrams and your Facebooks, they show a totally different side of you.
Yeah.
You need to rethink why you're here. And that's our job. I think once for me as well, doing some of the events for FCA in Central Arkansas, when we do our banquets, and that is when we have our coaches who nominate kids for integrity, service, teamwork, and excellence, which are our four. And I've had coaches tell me that they didn't have anybody who lived up to that. I said, I've got my work to do, work cut out for me. But then you see the other ones who the coaches are just raving about these kids, and we get to personally meet them and get involved, that it's heartwarming. It's just opens up a whole new world.
Yeah.
Let me explain how FCA has changed our life. Being a lifelong firefighter in some of the coolest venues in NASCAR and drag boat racing, my whole career, I planned when I retired to be a chaplain following NASCAR. And we went as far as we bought a big giant fifth wheel and a toter. We're going on our way back to Daytona for training, and we were going to follow the circuit. And then COVID hit and everything changed. That's why we went to Arizona. But the point I'm trying to make is my whole career as a firefighter, and having God behind that and guiding us as an emergency ministry chaplain, I wanted to go to work for NASCAR when I retired full-time on the road. After 1 year of being in Sheridan School District with FCA, doing the FCA work, what we get as a couple out of that is way more than I ever could have found with NASCAR, even though NASCAR is great. I love it. I mean, they pray before every meeting. There's more prayer in NASCAR than there is in most companies. But the point I'm trying to make is, if I was offered that chaplain position now as a traveling firefighter and chaplain in a huge something like NASCAR, I wouldn't take it because of the kids in Sheridan School District.
Yeah.
That is just fed what we both are as humans, and just makes us who we are today, that we're where we're supposed to be. God is kicking doors open.
Yeah.
With FCA.
You always say you want to be a vessel and let your light shine and let him do work through you. It's every day we're amazed. Every day we're amazed.
Yeah. That's so good.
Something that you mentioned earlier is, if there was a coach or a young person listening to this podcast, what turned in our lives? And it was giving up the human side of life and gratification as a human and living for Christ. Before you have that, it looks like a huge something that you could never achieve, and you really want to self-gratification. When you realize that it all comes from God, his gratification that you're doing right, which is everything that FCA is about, is way more beneficial than ever it could be doing it ourselves.
Yeah, that's so good. You said something earlier, Pam, that I want to expand on for just a second, and it's the ministry of presence. That was one of the first things I learned in FCA ministry. I got the chance to intern in Springfield, Missouri with the FCA team there before I transitioned to Arkansas as I was in college. And the area director there, he taught me early on, he said, the ministry of presence, just showing up, just being present, being available, being there is one of the most important things that you can know in ministry. And it sounds like from what you guys have said, that's been a huge part of your story in ministry as well. I could imagine similarly of being a chaplain in more secular spaces, NASCAR, even right now in Sheridan schools, it's a lot of, okay, we want to build relationships with people, and we want to show the love of Jesus through our own lives so that they can see the change and the impact that that's had. And sometimes that can be difficult. It can be hard to show up day in and day out and really, number one, either feel like you're making a difference, or two, feel like you are being poured into or have the ability to walk with the fruit of the Spirit, to be able to show that to the people around you. What has been something, as you guys have stepped into FCA ministry, that has continued to fuel you? And I guess even further back than that, in your time as a pastor, Scott, and just as you guys have lived your lives for Christ, what is the source that you draw from? How do you continue to foster and grow and build your relationship with Jesus even now, as you've been in ministry for some time and experienced that? What keeps you going? What keeps you growing?
I think one of the things that I did is, after you've been, like you said, out there and you're doing it day in, day out, sometimes you feel like you're feeding and you're not being fed. And I think one of the things that I searched at, especially through our church, they do some programs for women that are mentoring, and also something called Camp Well. And that goes through, and then they have a 4KK they do. But it's more getting into figuring out who you are with what you're doing. And that's why I keep going back to the identity of, who am I really in Christ? What do I really believe in about Christ? What do I want to share? And how do I want to study and learn the word so that I can foster it off to other people? Yeah. And it's funny, because I was telling you, don't laugh at my crown. I have a crown that I keep on my dashboard every day, because when we really find our identity is not in our sport, it's not in our trophies, it's not in the case, it's not in, all the accolades, because in an instant, as I found out, that can be gone. But I realized that being a child of Christ, and that's only from being able to study, stay in the Word daily, that I've really found how deeply loved I am. And this crown reminds me that I'm a child of a king, so that makes me a princess, so I better act like it, And if we're out there, telling that, I don't want to be, I always tell the kids at the beginning of the year, I say, what is one word that you guys have going into this new year that will help you, or what you want to get rid of, so that you can grow in Christ throughout what we're going to be doing in these huddles and our devotionals? And they all wrote down things. But from last year to this year, those words did not change, from a whole different group of kids. And it all stemmed from things like, fear and anxious and want to be accepted and all those kind of things. And when I tell them about their purpose, and that we're created to do a lot more than just our sport. And I keep fostering, going back to studying, as you referred to, how do we keep ourselves going? It's that sometimes when you're feeding, you need to be fed. So you need to step aside and find where you're going to be fed, so that you can go out refreshed and be able to continue what you're doing with these kids.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so good. I think sometimes we can get into a mode where we just want to go, that we forget to be led by the Spirit. And we forget to, because this thing can be titled as ministry work, or this is a part of my job description, you almost can forget sometimes what God is really wanting you to do in all of that. Because going and being present with students is great, but if the Spirit isn't leading you to do that, and He's leading you to do something else, then you're being disobedient to the Lord in that. And we can, in our motives, do right things that we think are right things, when really the Spirit's leading us elsewhere. And so I've noticed that in my time in FCA, it's a lot of like, I can do busy work just as much as anyone else can, but how am I intentionally seeking Jesus today for the betterment of my own personal relationship with Him, and for the betterment of the students, the coaches, the drivers around me, who really need to see and hear the good news, the gospel of Jesus.
It's funny, too, when you talk about that, because when we're trying to figure out, like you said, how am I feeding myself and how am I feeding them, it always brings me back to the identity that I have. It's the point that I need to recharge myself and know that we were created for something really big, that we were given God gives talents, and that we need to go out and that we're his masterpiece, if you will, that we're no longer out separated. I had a challenge for the kids this last year, and it was to go down the hall and find a kid, the one that everybody knows that walks with his head down, or that goes turns off when they think a football player is coming by or somebody in sports or whatever, and that they need to walk by and say, hey, how's it going? And keep on walking. The next week you go up and say, hey, how was your weekend? Keep on walking. The next week go up, hey, we're having Fields of Faith or Courts of Faith. Why don't you come? Where we had kids come who the principals would actually look like this and go, I never thought they'd walk through the door. But we having them do that, inviting. And I think what that does is it lets kids and people know everybody wants to be loved and accepted. Everybody wants to be noticed. Everybody wants to have that feeling. And if they can't get it from people around them, where they're supposed to be the light and we're supposed to be showing what God is doing through us and portraying that, I think it's interesting that when the kids see that happening, as we are critical incident chaplains, I flat out tell the kids, because you said all those things about what you think you are and what you're showing, that I never want to come to a school, especially this one, and have somebody come to a school and do a shooting because they didn't feel loved or accepted or wanted. And I think so when I grow myself, I'm able to better help them grow just by being that example and that light of what it really means. I mean, there's so many things in the Bible that talks about it. Kids will say, at these young ages, oh, I'm too broken. I've sinned too much. And I'm thinking, you're 12, you're 14, but to them, it's a huge deal. So we try and tell them that, we're forgiven, we're redeemed. We've got to remember why we're where we are because of what he did for us.
We need to lead by example. And show the kids to lead by example. On the same thing that Pam was talking about, I've got a story. This happened prior to us getting here to Central Arkansas, but there was a young man that was walking through one of the schools in the halls, and a football player, big football player that was in FCA, was learning this, how to talk to somebody that might have their head down, and he did it. This big football player talked to a kid that was walking with his head down, and you don't have to be buddies with them. Just acknowledge them. Say hi. Say hello. And in time, that football player did that to a young man that was walking through the hall with his head down. And that young man said later, the reason his head was down is he was thinking about going and killing himself. He was thinking about suicide. Because that young football player, what an image of a big football player. The kids look up to that. So if you're in sports, or just saying hello could mean so much. That he says that football player that said hello to him saved his life because he did not commit suicide because somebody recognized him, and how huge that is. There's a story I heard a long time ago about there's a couple different types of churches. One that's a university that's there to teach you, and another one that's kind of like a hospital. And that's what I need. I need to learn, but I need to know what I'm doing wrong in my life to live a life like Christ wants me to, and how God. And I think that's what I love about Grace Church is, to me, it's more like a hospital. It's there to heal you and help you. And that's the same role that we have as leaders in FCA, to be with these kids, is to lead by example and to show them the better life that Christ can give you. We all try to be our best or live the life we are. And when you have Christ, it's even better.
Wow. Man, that's such an impactful story. And I know those things happen every single day on school campuses, and that's why it's so important, the ministry that we get to do and have the privilege to do, because students are hurting. Whether you know who Jesus is or know about Jesus or not, there is hurt and pain in this world, and if we don't find the right outlets to be able to give that and cast our cares on the Lord and bring our burdens to him, it's really hard, especially for a student who their life is surrounded by brokenness and hurt and pain, to be able to find a healthy outlet for that. And that's why I think FCA is so important, because we're talking about a football athlete who impacted a student who I assume was not an athlete. Mm-hmm. It's an athlete living on mission to simply just be kind.
Yep.
How impactful is that, to just see a young man say, you know what, I don't even need to just go up and share the gospel with this kid. I just want to live it out to him. Mm-hmm. I just want to say, you know what, Lord, use me today. Yes. I want to be kind to him. How cool is that, to be able to hear that and see that story kind of come full circle? And it's not just a story. It's a deeper heart change that comes from knowing God. He turns the darkest and most broken of hearts and homes and situations for his good. Absolutely. And that's the impact that Jesus has into our lives.
I think also, too, living out in LA, where it's crazy, kids are different. Yeah. You know, it's totally different than here. But then coming here, really the bottom line is that there's no difference.
Yeah.
These kids, as you mentioned, there's a lot of things going on. They have a lot of issues. And just to be able to go share light with them and hope. And I think some of them, you can even almost see their heads do this tilting thing, like, really, you know, I can get through this, and yeah. I can trust, and I can be a part of a bigger picture of family. And I think that's what I love about what we do when we do huddles, is that we unite teams, we unite kids on a same level playing field, if you will. So no matter what their background is, that they can all come together and share the gospel. And then that gives them that boldness to be able to go out and share it. We use our FCA bracelets daily. We hand these out like water, and we explain the reason why we have those. And the kids, we tell them it is the easiest way to start a conversation with anybody, because, but the first thing is, I need you to know what it means.
Yeah.
You know, so we go through all of the heart, the division, the cross, and the question mark with them. And we'll walk down the hall and you see kids with them, or they ask for them, and I take mine off and give it right to them, you know. And I think having those resources that we have to be able to build that for them, it's huge. I didn't even know we had some of the resources that we have till I really got into it. I mean, we have wrestling Bibles, we have athletes Bibles, coaches Bibles, and we can hand those out, sports Bibles, that just on a daily basis, kids may have never had one, and to see them actually get a Bible in their hand,
we've been able to take FCA into NASCAR, and we have chapel at NASCAR at Talladega Super Speedway. We are some of those people. There's 350 fire and EMS people that it takes to put on a race at Talladega, and we're some of the only church that they get. So to have a church service at Talladega right in the fire station and to pass out FCA bracelets and explain that has become huge. I was blown away how many people wanted to know that the FCA bracelet with all of that is a starter for conversations on your life with Christ. It's so much that I'm preaching this next race in October, and my whole sermon is going to be about the FCA bracelet and what does it mean, because there's such a need and a love to find out at Talladega.
Yeah, that's so cool. We are just about out of time here. I told you it goes by quick, especially when you're talking about your life and your story and things you're passionate about. But thank you for coming on and sharing your guys' stories. I know there's so many other things that we probably could have talked about on here, but I'm thankful for all that you're doing in Sheridan, all that you're doing in the NASCAR world. I know it's been a heavy time recently in the NASCAR world after Kyle Busch passed away, and there's so much of a need for ministry in every avenue of life and every avenue of sports. And so I'm thankful for what you guys are doing here in Central Arkansas and beyond. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
We just love it.
Yeah. So
we love the ministry.
Absolutely. And we are just so grateful for the show and for you listeners who come and support us every week. We are a little over a year now that we've recorded episodes, and we're going to keep pumping out new episodes for you every single week. So thank you for joining us on the Central Arkansas FCA podcast, where faith meets competition. We will see you again next week.
When the world is just too much, turn it off and turn on positive, encouraging K-Love.
I'm gonna praise.
World off, K-Love on.
K-Love is sunshine for my soul.
I love K-Love.
Listen now on your radio, online, or on the free K-Love app.
K-Love makes me feel so good.
Positive, encouraging K-Love.